All right, check. Okay, so this morning I'm making some coffee and I'm gonna try to, all the YouTube videos I watch, they say you need to stick to a topic or talk about a topic. So today's topic is going to be basically quality over quantity when it comes to picking food. Because most of the time, especially when I was younger, I always chose quantity over quality. And I was an athlete, so I always assumed that any amount of exercise I did would undo the garbage food that I was putting in my body. I'm putting Celtic sea salt in my coffee and also ghee. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what ghee is. It's like refined butter. But learned that from Dave Asprey. And before that, I was trying to find healthier solutions for my coffee. And the coffee, I'll tell you, it almost killed me. But I digress. What I'm trying to get to is the quantity versus quality argument and why you should always choose quality first when choosing food. So anyways, that's what the discussion is going to be about. I'm going to make my coffee here and then I'm going to go into the living room. All right, good morning. This is Sunday, my third day of my 30-day video making challenge. They say that you really need a theme. You can't just ramble. Even though it's pretty easy for me to ramble, I'm gonna try to stick to one subject today. And the one subject that I want to talk about is actually health. Because especially as you get older, health becomes your primary concern for just every decision you make during the day. When I was younger, of course, I ate whatever I wanted to, and it was real easy to look like you were in good shape because you were just so active, especially, I was born in 1967. So the 70s into the 80s, we were poor, so it's easy to be thin when you're poor because we were making air sandwiches, we were making bread sandwiches. If we had some sugar, we might make some sugar sandwiches. Literally just sugar on white bread, which is not healthy at all. But if that's the only thing you're gonna eat for 4 hours, then it's really not that bad. And we were playing soccer and just running around the neighborhood, riding our bikes. We were pretty busy. And riding bikes now is a fitness thing, but when you were a kid, that's just how you got around. And if your bike was stolen, which in my neighborhood, all the bikes got stolen, and sometimes you'd have to steal it back, you were walking. So, yeah, so we got plenty of exercise, even though our diets might have been pretty junky. But if we wanted junk food like chips and soda and stuff, then we'd have to go to somebody else's house because we didn't have that stuff in our house. Not because we didn't want it, my mom just could not afford it. But that's the way I grew up. I grew up just eating whatever. And if you've got a kind of a poverty mindset or a scarcity mindset, you might still do that. Because when you grow up poor and you aren't used to having food all the time, then whenever you do get food, you consume it. You don't waste anything. And as you get older, this is why a lot of poor people end up fat, because as they get older, they start making more money. They still have that poverty mindset, that scarcity mindset, and they're just over consuming because you don't know when you're going to get your next meal. You just went to Costco, you just went to Sam's or BJ's or whatever, loaded up on a lifetime supply of ramen and other stuff. So you've got a full pantry in there, but every time you eat like it's going to be your last meal. And I used to do that. But because I was younger and I didn't produce a lot of fat cells in my body. We were poor, so there weren't any fat cells to produce. You end up producing, this is something I learned from a handful of guys I watch on YouTube, but you produce fat cells when you're younger, up until you're about 21 years old. And then you really don't produce anymore. So if you're really young and you're over consuming and you produce all these fat cells when you're really young, you're definitely going to have weight problems into adulthood. Whereas we were poor and we were outside a lot and very active, so we didn't produce a lot of fat cells. So even though all through my 20s and 30s and into my 40s, I was eating garbage, I didn't gain a lot of weight because I just didn't have a lot of fat cells to fill up. Whenever you're consuming garbage and you start to get fat, basically your body is encapsulating toxins and storing it as fat. And that's how people get fat. But a lot of that fat is water. So when you start eating a better diet and you start eliminating those toxins, that fat can go away. You flush it out, basically. So anyways, my whole point here is the quality of your food. So now, as an adult, I still battle with the scarcity mindset, but whenever I buy food, I always focus on quality first. I never look at price. I never look at price. Because if you start looking at price, you start falling back into the poverty mindset thinking, oh man, that's a lot of money. What happens if Armageddon hits and I need a pantry full of stuff just in case? And you really don't. And now let's go back to when I was 40 years old. Because when I was 40, that's when all of my quantity and scarcity mindset started destroying my health. So at 40 years old, I was warming up for a soccer game and still an athlete, still competitive. I was playing in the open division, I think. But anyways, I'm warming up for a soccer game. I get there about 45 minutes earlier because as I'm getting older, I'm still stiff. So I need at least 45 minutes to warm up before the game starts. And I'm running backwards, running forwards, and I'm feeling something through my chest. And it was like a tingling from elbow to elbow across my chest. My chest was tight, and I'm like, I am too young to be having a heart attack. But I know that whatever I'm feeling, I've never felt it before. But before every game, I would take 100 milligrams of aspirin, 100 milligrams of no-dose, which is caffeine, and 60 milligrams of pseudoephedrine. And that was my own little proprietary blend. But later on, from some fitness guys and some bodybuilders, they called it the stack. And it was a performance enhancement. In fact, whenever you see Olympic athletes, whenever they get caught up in these doping scandals and they said it's just cold medicine, it's pseudoephedrine. If you go to Walgreens, they now sell it behind the counter, but you can get wall-fed, which is pseudoephedrine. It enhances your alertness and you start to see things develop 2 to 5 seconds before it happens. So as an athlete, it's a great advantage. Whenever you see somebody giving an interview at the end of a game and they're wide-eyed and they're really talking fast, that is pseudoephedrine. And whenever you see guys losing their temper and just yelling and screaming at everybody, that's pseudoephedrine. And what do they make with pseudoephedrine? Meth. They take a bunch of pseudoephedrine, that's why it's sold behind the counter now, but they take a bunch of pseudoephedrine, mix it with some chemicals of some sort. I don't know why you got to mix it with chemicals, but I guess it just enhances it and it keeps it going longer or something. But anyways, so I would take that, and I think the aspirin probably helped me from just falling over dead during the game or at the end of the game. Even though whenever you see somebody die on the field, it's probably because they took 1,000 milligrams of pseudoephedrine before the game started, and that shit'll just dry you up. I don't know exactly what it does, but 30 or 60 milligrams was always enough for me, and once every week or two was fine. When I was younger, I would just take 100 milligrams of caffeine because the pharmaceutical grade caffeine was better than like a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee might have 80 milligrams or 120 milligrams of caffeine within the coffee bean, but pharmaceutical grade is super refined, so there's no buffers. Like in coffee, you've actually got the coffee itself. It's a buffer. The water is a buffer. The ghee or the half and half or whatever you put in your coffee, that's also a buffer for the caffeine getting into your bloodstream. But when you take pharmaceutical grade caffeine, 100 milligrams of that, that is, you can put it under your tongue and you're going to open your eyes. But of course, then your body will reject it. So you need to be close to the bathroom when the game ends because it's going to go right through you. But anyways, so I'm warming up for the soccer game and I start feeling this, but I'd taken my supplements. I end up playing the game and I didn't feel great. I almost get into a fight with one of my teammates at the end of the game, and I'm just not feeling good. That was a Sunday game. By Wednesday, I am just winded. I feel horrible. And my wife and I were sharing a car because one of us had our car in the shop, and we pull up to drop our son Noah off at preschool. And I walk him in and then I walk out and I sit down and I go, man, I don't know. I do not feel good. And she said, you look gray. And I said, I feel like crap. So she calls her sister, who is a registered nurse, and she said, you need to get him to a doctor. So we end up going to the doctor. The doctor does a bunch of tests. And of course, because I'm an athlete, I got a strong heart. Anything you test is going to sound okay. They do a bunch of tests in the doctor's office. They say you're okay. Let me go ahead and make you an appointment at the cardiologist. So I go to the cardiologist and he says, everything looks good. He says, okay, come back tomorrow and we'll do a nuclear stress test. And I have no idea what a nuclear stress test, of course, is. I say, okay, no problem. The next day, I go back to the cardiologist's office and he tells me what he's going to do. The first thing we're going to do is a big CAT scan. So I lay down on the machine, they do a big body scan, and I come back out. And then he says, okay, you're going to get on the treadmill. We're going to get your heart rate up to 120 beats per minute. And then I'm going to inject this dye into your veins and it's going to help find any blockages or whatever. So I get on the treadmill and my heart rate starts in the 40s, because maybe 50s, because I had been moving around. But my resting heart rate back then was in the 30s. If I was laying down, going to sleep, it would be in the 30s. So I get on, I'm like, God, 120, I don't think so. And it's 70, it hurts. And then I'm at 80, I'm like, oh my God. And finally it gets to 90 beats per minute. I'm like, I can't go on any longer. My chest was killing me. He goes, okay. He injects the dye, and I think that I had a little IV or something. He injects the dye, and I step off the treadmill. As soon as I step off, my heart rate goes from 90 beats per minute down to 30 beats per minute. He panics and yells, call an ambulance. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching my heart rate on there, and it starts to slowly tick back up again. And later on, somebody had told me that is usually an indicator of a heart attack. Of course, I don't think I really had a heart attack. I was still fully conscious of what was going on, but my chest was killing me. And anyways, the paramedics come in. Now the cardiologist office is right in front of the Pepin Hospital. But of course, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to run to the hospital because I'd probably just take a dirt nap right there in the parking lot. So the paramedics come in, and one of these paramedics says, you know what my brother-in-law did? He started drinking pomegranate juice. And it's the first thing out of this guy's mouth. And I'm thinking, what is a pomegranate? I didn't even know what a pomegranate was. And I'm like, why is this guy telling me about pomegranate juice? It didn't make any sense to me. And so then they're asking me questions and they're checking everything out. Of course, I look fine and I feel fine now. But they load me up into the ambulance. They drive me out and drive me right back to the hospital. They admit me real quick. And they're going to do an emergency angioplasty, because now the cardiologist, while they're doing all that, he's looking at everything that he sees, and he sees a 95% blockage and a 40% blockage. I have no idea where these things are. I'm just pointing to my chest. I really don't know where they were. But there was a 95% blockage and a 40% blockage. And so what they do is they go up through the groin with a little camera and something, and I don't know how he does this thing, but he's going up in there and he's watching something, and he inserts a stent in the artery. So it's a little wire mesh thing that kind of just blows up and opens up the artery. Well, what happens is you start getting plaque on the outsides of the artery that pushes it in, and then he installed this mesh thing that just pushes it out. So I've got this stent for this 95% blockage, and the 40% blockage, I don't even know what he did. He just scraped something or pushed it. He might have just gone in and just pushed it open because you got that plaque and it'll probably just break up a little bit. Anyways, next morning he comes in, asks me how I'm feeling. I'm feeling great. He says, okay, I want you to take these drugs. He gives me Plavix, which keeps the platelets slick, okay, so that nothing will coagulate or create a blockage within the arteries. He gives me a statin, which keeps your cholesterol low, your LDL cholesterol keeps that low. And then he gave me a beta blocker. And the beta blocker, I'm not exactly sure what it does, but from what I gathered, it just keeps your adrenaline suppressed so that nothing excites you. When I started taking the drugs, they drained me worse than I felt before I went to the hospital, and certainly worse than I felt after I got out of the hospital. Keep in mind, this is 18 years ago. Okay, I was 40 years old. I'm 58 now. This is 18 years ago. So I'm taking those drugs, and on the second day, I'm like, man, I can't take these drugs. I had two small children at the time, 2 and 4 years old. I was basically their primary care provider. And I thought, man, my kids could be drowning in a pool, and I don't think I would give a shit. That's just how disinterested and low energy I was. I don't think I could, not only could I not save them, but I don't think I would even care that they were struggling. So I said, I can't take these. So what I did was I got on the internet. Keep in mind, it was 18 years ago, so there wasn't a lot of information out there, but the internet was still a thing. And I started researching everything that was good for my heart and everything that was bad for my heart. And what I did was I avoided everything that was bad for my heart, and I focused on consuming only things that were good for my heart. And at the time, the thinking was that everything from the cow was bad. Now we realize it's probably ultra-processed foods. It was like, I didn't even really know. I was like, if this is good for my heart, I'm consuming it. If this is bad for my heart, I'm avoiding it. And so I got a Jack LaLanne, was it Jack LaLanne juicer? I think that's what it was. And I was juicing it. And I would buy things I didn't even know what they were. If they were vegetables and they were good for my heart, like I got leeks one time. You know what leeks are? They're onions. And I got bunches of them. I just juiced all that stuff. And I consumed so many leeks, I just smelled like body odor all the time. It was just coming from my mouth. And of course, nobody wanted to be around me because I just stunk. But I did that for 6 months. I didn't just consume leeks. I consumed all kinds of vegetables, but basically anything that was good. And most of it was leafy, green, chlorophyll filled vegetables. And for about 6 months, and felt great. Of course, I threw away the drugs. All right, that was like the first thing. I threw away the drugs and just started juicing for about 6 months. Then after that, I was still playing soccer. In fact, I was riding a bike about 6 days after I went to the hospital. And they're telling you, don't do anything because this thing's got to heal up. They want it to heal up for at least 2 weeks, but I was antsy. Within 6 days, I was out there riding a bike. I was trying to be careful not to bleed out. So this thing healed up pretty quickly. And I was playing soccer, and then one night, I got this idea. I said, man, I am going to push myself. I feel great. I'm really going to push myself tonight. And we were just playing pickup soccer. But one night I went out there and I played hard all night long. And I was sprinting hard and running hard and scoring goals. And by the end of the night, man, my chest was killing me. Okay, now this wasn't the same feeling of the numbness from elbow to elbow across my chest. Instead, it was just like a pain right in my esophagus, again, that I'd never felt before. After the game, everybody was going to Beef O'Brady's. And I said, okay, I'll meet you over there. So we go over there and I get something cold to drink. My chest is still hurting. I get something cold to drink and it hurts even worse. So then I ask for just some room temperature just room temperature tea, iced tea, but without the ice. And so I drink that and that feels a little bit better because I'm thinking to myself, I need to hydrate. Who knows what's going on here, but I need to hydrate. So there reaches a point where I start to feel nauseous. And I say, okay, guys, I'm taking off. All right, see you later. And I walk out to my car and I throw up. And I'm hoping that's it, but I can feel it's not. So I open up the car, get in, drive across the parking lot, open up my car door again, throw up again, open up my flip phone, because it's 18 years ago, call 911 and say, hey, I think I'm having a heart attack, and I give them my home address. I'm about 2 miles away from home. I stay on the phone with these people as I'm driving home, and I walk into the house. I go to the kitchen cabinet, pull out the aspirin, take 2 aspirin, chew it up, walk to the back bedroom, walk into the bathroom, throw up the previous night's dinner. I'm just pulling everything out and lay down on the bed. April's like, what's the matter? And I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. I called 911. So in a couple minutes, the paramedics show up. And of course, they're checking me out. Everything looks great, because it always does. And they say, do you want to go to the hospital? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. Who knows what, because when you go to the hospital, they're cutting you open. And I just did not want that. So I'm like, no. They say, listen, if we leave, we're not coming back. And are you sure? And I'm like, finally, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just go ahead and go to the hospital. As a man, it's like this huge sign of weakness when you're wheeled out on the stretcher, out to the ambulance, all your neighbors are out, and they're like, oh my God, this old man went out. And I wasn't even old, I was 40. This old man went out and hurt himself on the soccer field. He's so weak. Those are the things going through my mind. So they put me into the ambulance and they back out. No lights, no sirens. But as we're pulling out, we're going through the neighborhood, and there reaches a point where I feel like I start to just get anxiety. I start to feel overwhelmed, and I start to pass out. I don't know what it was, but I could feel everything start to close in on me. And the paramedic who was back there with me, she raises my shirt, puts a patch on my chest, and then lifts me up and puts a patch on my back. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, this lady's getting ready to shock me. And so that kind of got a little adrenaline going and raised my heart rate back up, and it woke me up. And so then, but they hit the sirens and they race on down there. And of course, when you've got a history, it's been a year since my previous thing, but when you've got a history of heart things, you move right to the front of the line, okay? And I do appreciate that great service. Right to the front of the line. So again, they have to do an emergency angioplasty, and they are going to go up again through that artery and see what they see. Except now there's no dye, there's no test, they're just going in immediately. And I see the cardiologist almost immediately, the same guy I saw a year ago, hadn't talked to him since then. He comes in and says, okay, we're going to do emergency angioplasty. Okay, so they knock me out and do their thing. Next morning, doctor comes in and he says, how you feeling? I said, I feel great. He goes, so what have you been doing? He said, you've been taking the drugs? And I said, no. I think I told him I went straight raw vegan. He said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. So he's like, the 95% blockage where the stent was, everything had receded so much that the stent slid down a little bit, and he just opened it up and repositioned it. And the 40% blockage was gone. Everything looked great. I said, so what was my issue? He said, I really don't know, but that wasn't it. And I tell you, it didn't feel the same as the first time either. It was just right down the center of my esophagus. Later on, what I've gathered is that it's probably asthma, like adult asthma, because since that time, I've had this same episode probably 10 times, okay? And what happens is, I think it has something to do with the ammonium nitrate in the grass or something, or just overexerting myself. Because whenever I play very hard, I start to feel a little pain. Mentally, I have this anxiety attack, and then I have to go lay down or I'll throw up. But yeah, I do end up just pushing myself too hard because I remember how strong I was when I was a kid. And as an adult, you always think that you're that strong again, and you want to push yourself to your limit. And sometimes your heart and lungs can't handle that. So anyways, he said, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it because everything looks fantastic in there. And I said, well, I just went straight raw vegan. And now that was 18 years ago. Over the past 18 years, I've learned a lot more about diet and the role exercise plays in conjunction with diet. Because if you're gonna be healthy, diet has to be your priority. But if you want longevity, if you want to live a long time, that's where exercise comes in. There's a statistic that the overwhelming majority of people in nursing homes are there because they cannot lift themselves off the toilet. Now, I heard this when I was in my 20s, and it always stuck with me because I'm like, I don't want to be in that situation. Not that anybody would ever have enough money to put me into a nursing home. I would just end up homeless, but still, I would not want to be in that situation where I'm have to be cared for by people just because I can't lift myself up. So that's why I go to the gym now. That's why I work out now. That's why I continue to play soccer to the extent that I do, because I don't want to be a burden on other people later on in life. But with food, what we've learned is that animal meat is pretty good for you, provided that the animal itself has been cared for. That's why grass-fed, grass-finished beef is so much better for you than corn-fed, grain-fed beef. Because number one, grain makes cows sick and fattens them up because it does the same thing to all of us. Most people are not fat, they're swollen. Their body is reacting to all these toxins that they're putting in their body. Same thing with cows. You feed them grain, they get sick, they start to swell, and they get more money for them whenever they take the cow to sell it. So you really want grass-fed, grass-finished beef because that's going to be a lot healthier, and the fat that's in the beef is good. Now, all I do is just focus on what is good, healthy, natural, organic. I try to eat as natural as possible. 18 years ago, I eliminated meat because I didn't know the difference between good and bad meat. Now that I do, I eat a lot of meat and really limit my vegetable intake because, and this is something else we're learning, not all vegetables are good. That's a whole other conversation. Essentially, leafy green vegetables, they don't want to be eaten. They create oxalates. And oxalates are these little jagged things that I don't know exactly what they do, but they wreak havoc on your gut biome. Not all leafy green vegetables are good. Fruits are good. Fruits are intended to be eaten. The plant literally makes the fruit with seeds in it, hoping that an animal will come eat the fruit, consume the seeds, poop the seeds out, and plant this plant somewhere else. That's how it expands and grows and multiplies. But the leaves are what it needs to nourish itself from the sun, from water. It's the leaves that pull in all the nutrients to feed the fruit. The leaves don't want to be eaten, but we do consume a lot of leafy green stuff because of the chlorophyll, and there's a lot of vitamins in there, and that's what it's supposed to be doing. But it's supposed to be providing nutrients to the fruit. And so that's where I'm at. I'm eating a lot of meat, a lot of eggs, because eggs are nutritious, and not eating too many vegetables, though I'm eating a lot of sauerkraut because I'm focusing more on the gut biome and the internal health of my body, and avoiding all pharmaceutical drugs. I didn't even get the vaccine. I know a lot of people who got the vaccine, they had to get the vaccine. I was not getting the vaccine, did not want the vaccine, and was not going to do anything that was going to require me to get the vaccine. Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. So when I go to the grocery store, I don't even look at the cost of anything. The first thing I do is I look at the ingredient label. And if it's good and healthy for me, I'm going to buy it. If it's got anything that's not healthy for me, I'm not going to buy it. So I don't look at the price, because if I look at the price, then I might not buy it. But then if I don't buy that and I'm focused only on quality, I'm not buying anything. And I got to eat. So, and I'll tell you what, if you're focused on quality versus quantity, you will not only are you not going to be able to buy as much food, you're not going to be able to eat as much food. You're only going to buy this much. Whereas if you're focusing on quantity, you can buy this much. If you're focused on quality, you can only buy this much. And so that's all you're going to eat. So of course you're going to be thinner. You're going to be thinner because you're eating less. You're going to be thinner because your body knows what to do with the food, because it can actually digest it. I mean, I've still got this right here that I just can't seem to lose, but I know why I can't lose it, because I'm not eating healthy 100% of the time. People still bring donuts to work, and I got no willpower, so I'm not going to eat a dozen donuts like I did when I was in my 20s, because I could put away a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts, no problem. I could eat a large-sized pizza by myself, no problem. I could probably do it now, but now I've got the wherewithal not to do that, because I want to be healthy. I don't want to be a burden on somebody else later on. So I'm going to focus on my health now so that I'm not a burden later on. And there's still stuff I want to do. So why be stuck in a chair or on a sofa because you don't have the energy and the strength to go out and do things? There's still a whole bunch of things I want to see and do. I need to be healthy. So when I go to the grocery store, I always focus on quality, and I ignore the price. And sometimes I'm surprised. I got up to the register, I'm like, geez, $200? And I've got 2 bags? But that's what quality looks like. I could have spent $200 and gotten a cart full of stuff. Cookies and soda and all kinds of stuff. I could have a cart full of stuff for $200. But I'm trying to be healthy. I eat a little. I don't eat a lot. So that's my whole thing. That's my rant today, or my conversation. Quality over quantity. Now I'm going to finish my coffee. It's probably cold. It's not cold. A little lukewarm, but not cold.